Since Mother's Day is coming up, I thought I'd make a video to celebrate. Now, if you were expecting a video showing how great and nice moms are, this isn't it. The exact opposite of that, actually. You see, not all mothers are great. Not all mothers are nice. Some mothers are monsters. Diane Downs. On May 19, 1983, Diane Downs arrived at the Mackenzie Willamette Hospital in Springfield, Oregon. She had a gunshot wound to her left arm, and sadly, her 3 children were shot as well. Christy Ann suffered a severe stroke from her injuries. Stephen Daniel, but he was known as Danny, was paralyzed from the waist down. Sadly, the 3rd child, Cheryl, was dead. Diane informs the police that it was an attempted carjacking. She was able to fight off the attacker and rush to the hospital. The police began investigating immediately, and Diane was soon able to work with a sketch artist, so they would have an idea of who they were looking for. This was the description she gave. The police went to the area Diane claimed the carjacking took place to look for some clues. As the investigation continued, it didn't take long for the police to notice some things didn't add up. Considering what just happened to her, being shot, witnessing her children being shot, and her 1 daughter dead, Diane appeared way too calm. At first, it was thought that she was in some form of shock. But then she does this interview a mere 4 days after the incident.
Is Elizabeth Diane Downs one of the victims of this attempt murder?
I'm throwing the keys, okay? I'm throwing the keys.
Simulating, yeah?
Yes, I go like that. I got in the car, jumped in, put the keys in. I just hit my cast. Started the car and left. The car door shut itself. God.
The laughing and joking, even putting on her makeup. You would never think that she was recently a victim of a terrible carjacking attempt, the result of which left 2 of her children in the hospital with severe injuries and her 3rd child murdered. The police found other things peculiar, like how there was no blood on the driver's side of the car, no gunpowder residue on that side either. Pretty odd considering she was shot in the arm. Her story started to unravel when it was discovered that she was the owner of a .22 caliber handgun. It seems that Diane forgot to disclose that little piece of information to the police. The gun itself was never recovered, but unfired shell casings were found in her home, which had the same extractor markings from the gun used to shoot her children. Witnesses also claim that on the day of the incident, they saw Diane driving extremely slow to the hospital, around 5 to 7 miles an hour. Completely contradicts what she told the police. On February 28, 1984, Diane Downs was arrested and charged. And thanks to the testimony from her daughter, Christy, she was found guilty and is now serving life in prison plus 50 years. She was put in the Women's Correctional Center in Oregon, but on July 11, 1987, she escaped. She was found only a few blocks away 10 days later, and earned an additional 5 years to her prison sentence for her trouble. She's been up for parole twice, and has been denied each time. Her next parole hearing will be in the year 2020, and I hope that too will be denied. Mary Beth Tinning. Only 8 days after Jennifer Tinning was born, she dies from hemorrhagic meningitis and multiple brain abscesses. Jennifer was the 3rd child of Joseph and Mary Beth Tinning. Sadly, their 2nd child, 2-year-old Joseph, would be rushed to the hospital 17 days later. He died of cardiopulmonary arrest. A few weeks after that, Barbara, their 1st child, was brought to the hospital as she was having convulsions. She died the next day. 3 children dead, Incredibly, the police decided not to investigate this. November 21, 1973, her fourth child, Timothy, was born. And just like his siblings, he too was rushed to the hospital. He was already dead when they brought him there. Mary Beth claimed that she went to his crib and found him that way. And the doctor believed it was sudden infant death syndrome, or SIDS. Joseph and Mary Beth were determined to start a family, and in 1975, their fifth child, Nathan, was born. He died a few months later. He suddenly stopped breathing in the car while he was out with Mary Beth. 3 years goes by, and even though Mary Beth is pregnant with her sixth child, they adopt a little boy named Michael. In a few months, she would give birth to Mary Frances, and just a short time after that, Mary Frances would die of SIDS. In 1979, her seventh child, Jonathan, was born. And sadly, like all the others, he dies as well. And like the last few children, SIDS was the reason. It seemed that since Michael was adopted, obviously he didn't share this supposed genetic defect, which took the lives of her 7 children. Turns out that wasn't the case. He was 2.5 years old when Mary Beth would bring him to the doctors, claiming that he just stopped breathing. Unfortunately, there was nothing they could do. Now this made the police finally take notice. They just assumed that the poor family had a bad string of sad luck with their natural children. But when that same thing happened to their adopted child, well, that was suspicious. They needed more proof. They would get it, however, it would be too late for another child. Mary Beth's 8th child, Tammy Lynn, was smothered in her crib. The police considered Mary Beth the prime suspect and interrogated her. She admitted to killing Timothy, Nathan, and Tammy Lynn, but that was it. She confessed to smothering them with a pillow. She then recanted her confession, claiming that she was pressured by the police during the investigation. In the end, she was only convicted of the murder of Tammy Lynn. She received 20 to life in the Bedford Hills Correctional Facility for Women. She had several parole hearings and they were all denied.
Learned tonight that child killer Mary Beth Tinning of Schenectady has just been denied parole again. Tinning was convicted back in 1987 of killing her 4-month-old daughter Tammy Lynn, smothering her with a pillow. Tinning had 9 children. All of them died in infancy or just beyond.
It wasn't until August 21, 2018 she was released. Her husband Joseph was waiting for her. Catherine Knight. In Australia, it's not just the animals that want to kill you. Before Catherine ever met John Price, she had violent tendencies. She stabbed one of her previous boyfriends, David Saunders, with a pair of scissors, and hit her first husband, David Kellett, over the head with a frying pan. Yet no one ever expected this. John and Catherine had been getting into some heated arguments, and one day, Catherine stabbed him in the chest. Nothing serious, but troubling nonetheless. He wanted to keep his children safe, so he got a restraining order against Catherine. John was even reported to have told some co-workers that if he never came into work, it was probably because Catherine killed him. Ignoring his friend's concerns, John returned home. Catherine had apparently sent his children to a friend's house for a sleepover. Later that night, while Price was sleeping, she went into his bed and they had sex. Then he fell asleep right after. Now, I'll be honest, I'm a little confused on why John would do that, considering he just put a restraining order out on Catherine and told people that he feared for his life. This frighteningly stupid lack of judgment would be his last. It's unknown what exactly happened that night. John's neighbor was concerned as John's car was still in the driveway the next morning. When John failed to show up at work, they went to his house. They saw blood on his back door and immediately called the police. When they entered the home, they found John's body, and Catherine was unconscious. The police then believe that Catherine stabbed John in his sleep. He frantically tried to get out of the house and got to the back door, but eventually he succumbed to his injuries. The coroner found 37 stab wounds on John's body. I wish that was all she did, 'cause this is bad enough. Unfortunately, there's more. Catherine then skinned John. She left it hanging on a hook on a door. Also, his head was missing. The police investigated the scene and noticed that 2 plates of food were left out on the dining room table. They had notes with the names of John's children next to each plate. It seems that Catherine skinned John and cooked parts of his body and was going to serve it to his own children. They did find John's head. It was in a pot on the stove. Catherine was recovering in the hospital. She had taken pills in a probable suicide attempt. At the trial, she pled not guilty, claiming she had no memory of what had happened. Even with all the photo evidence, Knight maintained her innocence. She did plead guilty, however. Due to the severity of the crime, Catherine Knight would be the first woman in Australian history to get life in prison without the possibility of parole. She tried to appeal that ruling, stating that no possibility of parole was too severe for the crime, but that was thrown out almost immediately. She is currently in the Silverwater Women's Correctional Centre in New South Wales, and she will hopefully never leave. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please don't forget to hit that like button and then subscribe. Once again, my name is Rick, and I'll see you next time on Dissecting Murder.